Yes, folks, I know it's not Friday, I know it's Tuesday, but welcome to In the Library of Graphic Literature with your host, Wallace Ryan, me. Usually this broadcast comes out on a Thursday or Friday, depending on when we get our books and all that. But way out here on the North Atlantic, of course, with the snow and the high winds and delays and shipments and all that, we finally got last week's books this week, or at least let's start with this week. But it worked out okay because last week, of course, as a lot of you know, we did our best of 2017 show with my good buddy Dennis Osborne. Way to go, Dennis! It was great job, and I'm sure to be having him back. Now with myself here today, I got a little stack of books, and we're going to have a look through these, see what we have on the go here today. Okay, let's start with, yes, Volume 8 of the Don Rosa Library. This is Uncle Scrooge and Donald Duck Escape from Forbidden Valley. Comics so good you just want to eat them. I'm a huge Don Rosa fan. As a matter of fact, it was Don Rosa who really got me into the Duck books. I was, I'd read some Duck books when I was a kid and all that here and there, a few Duck stories. But when I got older, I really didn't go near them or touch them, or just didn't seem to be interested in them or whatever. Like, oh, these aren't serious comics. But I picked up his, I do believe it was 1995, he did a series, a 12-part series called The Life and Times of Scrooge McDuck, which in the end won an Eisner Award. And when I'd seen that, I was like, I gotta check this out. If this won the Eisner Award, there gotta be something about it. And I picked it up and read it and was just absolutely smitten. I fell in love with ducks right then and there. Since then, of course, I've collected all the books in the Don Rosa Library since they've been out. There's only 2 left to go, and I started collecting the Carl Barks Library too and all that. And I've become a huge duck fan. Funny enough, I was a duck fan when I was younger, but I was more a Howard the Duck kind of guy. But yeah, like I say, these the great thing about these stories is that they're just great adventures. They're wild. They're woolly. It's just like a constant go. Highly imaginative. Great dialogue. I love the characters. You just start to really fall in love with them after a while, right? So if you haven't given the Duck World a try, doesn't matter if you're a superhero fan or not, or just a fan of graphic novels, or if you're just a fan of, say, some good writing. Give Don Rosa's library a try. It's great. Thank you, Don, for such great books. Okay, let's see, what else do we have here today? Get out the razor blade. We're going to unwrap the Golden Age Green Arrow Omnibus, Volume 1. Now, once again, I love this new omnibus format from DC. I also love the old DC Archives format, and I collected a lot of those. As a matter of fact, I collected all. I think I have all but 12 of the DC Archives. So I was missing a few here and there, and a few that I just haven't been able to get, or they're just too expensive to buy or whatever. So when DC came out with the omnibus format, I was like, oh my god, this is a way that I can fill in a lot of these spaces in my collection. For instance, Wonder Woman, I was missing one of those. Same with the Flash, I was missing an early volume of Flash. But I do believe with both those now I've covered those holes in the collection. So let's have a look here. So beautiful cover here. I just love I love the the spines for these things. And let's have a look at it without its... Okay, these tend to have just sort of embossed like covers on them. Which is pretty cool. Now, I've been, in terms of Green Arrow, I've been a big fan of Green Arrow, well, especially since the Neil Adams days. And to be quite honest, Green Arrow was really a third-rate type of hero for the longest while, for decades, or at least from whatever it is in here. Let's have a look here. At least from 1941 until 1970. But I mean, there's sort of interesting stories. There's work by George Papp, the original artist. Let's see. Cliff Young. More George Papp. Just a Cliff Young. Good variety of people anyway. George Papp. A lot of the Pappmeister. But I mean, they're kind of typical, golden age type of stories and all that. Very much in the same vein as the Superman, Batman. That same sensibility. Green Arrow really, in some ways, was to me like a lighter version of Batman. And with him too, they did all the fancy things, like they gave him the Arrow car, and they gave him Speedy, his ward, and he was rich, just like Batman. But I fell in love with Green Arrow, like many people did, though, when Neil Adams changed him from this guy into the bearded rebel rouser that we all know and love today. Okay, away with you, Green Arrow, and let's try this for a change. Okay, BPRD Hell on Earth with Mike Mignola, John Arcudi, Guy Davis, Tyler Crook, and Dave Stewart. I don't know how many of you out there are big fans of the Mignola verse, but I am. I love just about anything that Mike does, and this series, it's amazing for an offshoot series to really take on a life of its own, which BPRD, in my mind, really has. I mean, Hellboy stands alone by itself, but BPRD doesn't need any help standing up. It works. It functions perfectly on its own. It doesn't need any help from Hellboy. Stories are fascinating. The art, of course, is always top notch. And to be quite honest, I just can't wait to read this. The stories are amazing. I don't want to look at too much because I don't want to give it away for myself. But any of you out there who haven't become immersed in the Mignola verse and haven't tried something like BPRD, give it a shot. It's well worth it. Let's see. Oh yeah, and of course, here we go with my latest addition to one of my favorite collections of books, the Library of American Comics. Oh yes, it's them again. Yes. And who can blame me for covering them so much, because I love their books. So this week's from them is Dick Tracy, Volume 23. I have the other 22 volumes just right over there, out of view. It's half and half. And Mr. Bribery. I just love, I love Chester Gould's work. It's funny reading, when I first started reading them, it was, of course, the first series I started to collect from Library of American Comics. And when I started reading them, it was just like the first 10 years, more or less a cop strip and all that, and kind of, halfway interesting. But around the 10-year mark, he really starts to let go, and it starts to become the Dick Tracy that we all know and love and all that, and it took off from there. There are some who think that it sort of started to dip a little bit into the 60s and stuff like that, and got a bit weird. But to me, the weirder Dick Tracy got, the more I actually liked it. So yeah, if any of you out there are not fans of Dick Tracy, give it a try. It's a bit, in some ways, it's a bit of an acquired taste, but I mean, it's a taste that is worth acquiring. There's something about his style I like, even though, you know, in some ways it's not your Neil Adams or your Jack Kirby or your Gil Kane. It's very different and all that, but there's just something so, I don't know, so iron-jawed and so old-fashioned and, you know, 1930s about the Dick Tracy in general. I just love it. I love cop shows and detective shows too, so of course I would love this. Now, last but not least, I did have a couple of PS art books there today, but I talked about them before, so I figure I'll leave them for another week. Or maybe even this Friday, later on this week, when I have to do another in the Library of Graphic Literature, because who knows, we may get another shipment of books this week. And if so, you'll be seeing me again. So I may throw those in, because I'm not sure if I got a lot of books coming in next week. Anyway, last for today on today's list here is the Marvel Masterworks Volume 11 of The Incredible Hulk. Now this one I really can't wait to get open. When I was growing up, I was more or less a DC fan, and it was only into the 70s. I mean, even in the 60s, growing up as a kid, I can remember buying the only comic I can really remember buying, the only Marvel comic I can remember buying, was Captain Marvel. For some reason, I liked that. Didn't go for all the rest. But I loved, I was a big Legion fan and stuff like that. But then as I got older and into the 70s and all that, I'd started, you know, just testing the waters, reading a Marvel comic here and there. It started really, I think, with the Avengers and Marvel Team Up and a couple of other titles. And one of the titles that, you know, sort of started my Marvel love was The Incredible Hulk, and it was around this time. This is around the time period of the comics that I began to read. These here now, this book here covers the final days on the book with Herb Trimpe. He goes up to, I think it was 193. Yep. He goes up to issue 193 and ends his story run there. Trimpe really, when I was growing up, was the artist most associated with Hulk. And I liked him. He was a great storyteller. Trimpe had great breakdowns. The way he paced the story was really cool and all that. His art, you know, I wasn't a huge fan of it, except for when he was either inked by John or Maurice Severin. I love those. Especially the John Severin inked Herb Trimpe stories, in my mind, were some of the best. Then Trimpe was followed up on his run by, where is it here now? Was followed on his run by Sal Buscema. I don't know if they're even warmly welcoming him in the first issue here. Len Wein was the writer, and Joe Staton was the inker. And I was a bit of a fan of Sal's from the Avengers and all that, and from the Defenders. But I like Sal when he has a good inker. He really shines when he has a good inker, like Klaus Janson. Even Rubenstein. But one of my favorite inkers of Buscema's was actually Joe Staton, and he just added something to Sal's work that just made it a little bit lusher. There was just something really, really neat, and I know. I just loved the shadow work and all that. I just fell in love with it. The later issues of these two, absolutely fabulous. And there you go. Well, yeah, the like I say, for you Hulk fans, it's worth picking up because, well, of course, it's Hulk. And for you Buscema fans, well, it's the it's the start of his classic run on it. And for you Trimp fans, it's the end of Herb's legendary run on it. So this is actually kind of a key book in some ways, at least for the Incredible Hulk Marvel Masterworks. So yeah, any of you people out there who are big, if you're a Hulk fan, you got to pick this up for sure. If you're a fan of Buscema or Trimp, once again, you got to pick that up too. For that alone, and I do believe that really is it for this week. Yeah, I don't really have a lot of more books to show you folks. But once again, I'm hoping that the comics come in this week as usual. Now, where I live way out on the East Coast here, as opposed to most people who get their comics on Wednesday, we out here in Newfoundland, we get our comics on Thursday. Now sometimes that gets bumped to Friday because of the weather or various delays and or holidays. So I'm just hoping for this week that we do get them, because I wouldn't mind doing like 2 shows in 1 week anyway. It's a lot of fun. I do enjoy making these shows. I hope that you folks out there enjoy watching them, and please keep the cards and letters coming. And if you have any questions that you want to ask me and have me address on the show, I'd be more than happy to do that. In the meantime, keep reading those books, and I'll see you at the comic book shop. Thanks for having me over. Bye!